Hey everyone, welcome to another Haze Reverb video. In this video, we're going to talk about the Japanese tier list, which I have referenced in the past in some of my videos, especially for when units come out. I'll sometimes reference what they are ranked on the Japanese tier list. I'll try to do that a lot more consistently, so people have an idea of where they are like situated. But I'll also link this tier or this web page in a comment below, so if you want to check it out, that will be there, and you can look like more deeply into it yourself. Like you can click into all these portraits and see like the translated name, the translated like Japanese to English descriptions and skill sets. I didn't want to like research every single one just because it's going to be too time consuming. But what I'm going to do here is we're going to talk about the units that are available on EN and how they compare to what they are ranked on the Japanese tier list. This tier list was also very recently updated, only like a couple of days ago, and that's kind of the reason why I wanted to go through it, because there's quite a lot of changes on this and a lot more units added to the tier list, because the last time they had updated the tier list was like basically a year ago. So now there's a lot more things we can have a look at now. And basically see how things are looking for the future when we get some of these units that the Japanese server has that we don't. So yeah, let's go through the units that are listed here. We're going to talk about both PvP and Crusade raid. There is a main story tier list, but they haven't updated that for like 2 years. But there's no real need to talk about that, in my opinion, because basically main story is all about just running Morgan or Alvida or Swimsuit Mirai, right? Basically one of the nuclear units. Most people will just use Morgan, and that's all you really need realistically for main story. Apart from that, even without Morgan and stuff, main story is not very difficult, right? So you can just use most like AoE units and couple of tanks and healers and you'll be fine. Alright, now for PvP, we're going to start off with the left side for the it says defense, but it basically means the like tank units, right? So first off, we got Hawk. No surprise, she's still the best unit in the game, at least for the guard side. I would say probably like even like combining all three types of units, she's probably still the best unit, right? So still a menace, but I think she's still she's more manageable now, right? You can run things like a heavy team, and you'll do well against the Hawk teams as well. But I guess most people who wanted to like invest in like a full team will usually just pick Hawk because it's a very safe PvP team to run. So a lot of the PvP teams on EN these days are like based around having a Hawk team, basically, right? Then we got normal red. So this is the assault type red. She is like an auto taunter, and she basically hard counters type T, right? And this is one of the reasons why I don't really PvP much anymore, because I was very disappointed by them releasing red basically 2 weeks after I have fully invested my gold books into type T. So I was very upset by that, and to avoid getting basically baited by like very strong units like that in the future, getting countered by a new release, I have basically mostly just stopped doing like PvP. I mean, I do it, but I don't like try hard and like change my comp around and all that too much, right? I just kind of just leave it there, and I get what I get. Right? If you're wondering why I haven't done PvP that much, that's basically the reason. Now these next two units, we don't have them, so I'm not going to talk about them until they get released, right? But then on tier 1, we have Shushu, Kraz, Mo, Transcendent Red, Normal Ophelia, DB2, and Kyra. Right, so these units that we have on EN, right? And I think they're all fairly solid choices. I'm not sure if I would put Normal Ophelia this high. Maybe there's some reason on the JP side that they run her that high. I think she's like pretty decent, but I'm not sure she's like T1 good, right? I think she's maybe like more like a tier 2 unit personally, but yeah, it could be different on the JP tier list. Now, just keep in mind that their meta is a lot more evolved because they have a lot more units than we do. and they have a lot more units that have overlimit. I don't know exactly which units have overlimit that we don't yet, but just keep that in mind, right? There will be some differences due to reasons like those sort of reasons. But everything else, I think I agree with. Shushu's probably the best auto taunt tank at the moment. She has like the armor debuff, pretty good. Crusade is pretty strong as well. Unfortunately, I don't have books to invest into her, but I think she's pretty good if you can afford to build her. Mo's always a solid guard, bust all your guards. Not much to say about that. Crusade Red's a pretty good unit, but she has very high investment requirements, right? You want her to be, I believe, rank 7 is the minimum to be good in PvP. You might, personally, right? Ideally, you want her to be rank 10, but I mean, their minimum will be rank 7. Below that, I think she's like probably fine, but not anywhere near as good. So that's why probably most people don't use red. I use it because I do have a rank 7 one. But yeah, aside from that, I think she's still a pretty solid unit. Pretty good utility with the stun when she dies, and of course she's an auto taunt. Like all auto taunts are basically going to be good for a while. DB2, I think she's a good counter unit if you're having like issues with like things that multi-hit tiles, right? Because you can place them next to your auto taunters, and if you're having trouble with things like Princess Guardia or whatever, then you can place it behind your auto taunt, and she will reflect the damage back to them, right? So that's a good way to snipe people. I think she wants some skill investment. Mine's not very heavily invested. It's like rank 3 or something like that. She still does okay, but I think she probably wants more skills to be effective. But yeah, then we got Kyra, which this one I was quite surprised with because I don't think she's used at all on EN. There must be some reason why she's ranked this high. But yeah, I don't know what that is at the moment. Then in tier 2, these tier 2 units are basically the filler units, right? So with the tiers, obviously tier 0 is basically your core units that are auto include if you have them, I would say. Or pretty much, right? Tier 1 is like all those solid units. Everything here is, above average, right? Then tier 2 is sort of your mid units, right? Your filler units. We have most of these units. We don't have this mini Julius. We do have Lulula, Farnese, the normal Julius, and Nastia, right? They're all pretty solid units. If you don't have Shushu because you missed the collab, then Nastia is sort of like the replacement, or like ideally you probably use red instead. But if you need 2 auto taunts and you don't have transcendent red, then you can do something like normal red plus Nastia, and that should cover your team because you do want. Or I would say I would suggest having at least 2 auto taunts these days. Now, Farnese used to be like T0, right? If you remember, if you've been playing for a while, or if you were playing from like way back, she was like considered one of basically the best tank. But now she's fallen out of favor because she just dies to Her Majesty or Princess Skadi, and she doesn't revive, or she doesn't get the. It's not really a revive. It's more like a second life. Like she just recoups all her HP. That doesn't really happen anymore. So obviously, why run Farnese when you can run like red or something instead, right? More utility. Her pass, basically her one of her skills just doesn't get completely nullified by the most commonly used DPS unit. But if you do need a tank and you don't have anything else, then she's still fine to use, but just not in her glory days anymore. Lulula, I think she's probably ranked a little bit low, in my opinion, for EN. I think she's probably more low tier 1, because I think she is going to be still probably the best tier affiliate bait. And if people don't run tier affiliate, then she's a pretty solid active taunting unit, right? And I guess not too many people run tier affiliate on EN as far as I know. So basically, you cover yourself with against people who do run it, and even if they don't run it, then she's still not going to be a unit that does nothing, right? She's still a pretty solid one. But maybe there's a unit here that you use as your tier affiliate bait instead. Not 100% sure on that, but yeah, that's the main guard units here. I won't talk about everything else below it. I mean, there's some like good budget units like like Jack Sui is like decent. I think Summer Lilith is like decent for like an assault team, but assault teams are not really used as far as I know on EN. So yeah, I don't want to talk about all of these, but these are also like a tier below. This is more for like if you happen to have these while like you're a newer player. Like I would say that's like the spot you'd be at. Like if you have absolutely no T-star rebates, then you would use Jack Soy as an example, right? But they're like usable, but not really like a unit that you should be considering if you're trying to push high ranks. Now for the DPS, but we don't have this one. But we do have the Transcendent Starry and the Transcendent Ophelia. Now, Transcendent Starry, I don't think she's this high on EN. She is a solid unit, but I think she probably has an over limit on JP server, which is why she's T0. But we don't have that at the moment, so I would consider her more like maybe a low tier 1. Like she's pretty good against most people, especially at lower ranks. At the higher ranks, most people are prepared for a T-Starry, so she sort of falls falls out of flavor at that point. But below that, like some people might not be prepared for a T-Starry, and that can just be like a free win because you take out 2 units straight away with a T-Starry, and that can be very devastating for the enemy side. Ophelia, very strong unit still. I'd say she's good on EN, but she requires a lot of investment, right? She wants to be at least rank 6, ideally rank 10. So not many people will have her, but those who have her probably already run her, or maybe some people have taken her out. I don't know. But I do think she's still a pretty strong unit. Right? If unchecked, she can just kill a unit straight away. There's only a couple units that survive the duel, right? And for that reason, I think she's worthy of being in tier 0. The other unit that I think should be in tier 0 for EN is Her Majesty, who's the current best DPS. That's probably different on JP because maybe the T-Stars have over limit, and that's why they sort of like bumped her down. But I think for EN, she would be up here. Everything else in the tier 1, I probably would agree with here, or at least the ones that we do have. One I want to point out to be wary of is Harriet here, because Harriet is going to be released this week. I'll talk about her more tomorrow once the patch hits, so we can look at her in game. But just keep in mind that she is a pretty strong unit, and she is coming out this week. As far as I can tell, she's an anti-revive unit, which makes me glad I didn't invest into Genia, because I think that will probably counter Genia, or at least keep her in check, right? That's why Genia is probably tier 1 instead of tier 0, where that's how I'd say she is on EN server. But a little bit of a similar thing here with like red to type T. I'll talk a little bit more about this one. We've got go into the supports, but basically like there's a couple of hard counters now to certain units, and that sort of bumps them down from being originally tier 0 when they got released down to like a lower tier. Fafnir still pretty strong unit here, which is good to see because I think I invested into her, and it's good that she's lasted quite a while. Then we've got some heavy type units. We've got Detective Mirai, Caitlyn. There's also going to be Swimsuit Suzu and also Flavira here. I'm not sure if Flavira is because she has an over limit, but these are like 4 heavy units that are pretty solid for obviously the heavy team. At least for Mirai and Caitlyn, they both have sniper abilities, which are very strong like abilities to have. They're basically their EX will do big damage to a unit while they're charging up. And because they charge up, they don't pass the turn back over to the enemy. So you'll find that the heavy teams, there's not that many, there's like 1 that I know of at the top ranks. But the heavy teams will basically snipe a unit on each of their turns while not passing the turn back until they actually do an attack with one of their actual DPS. Could be like, Princess Skadi or Chiaki or something like that. and that's when they'll pass the turnover. But by then, you'll have sniped at least 2 units, probably 3 to 4, like possibly 3 or 4, depending on how many units Chiaki kills or Skadi. And then, yeah, they're down like half their team basically, right? And that's what my team struggles with at the moment. I haven't really like tried to fix it, just I can't be bothered. But the heavy units are like rising in value, in my opinion. Difficult thing is obviously you want to have skill ups in a lot of these heavy units, right? And a lot of people just don't have that sort of amount of resources because they put everything into clock teams in the early days. Maybe newer players will be have an easier time investing into the heavy units. But yeah, generally speaking, I think you should just focus on one for the time being. And if you can afford to build a second team, with like properly, right, then you can consider like a heavy team for that instead. That's more for like cosmic showdown, like tryharding. Really, you don't really need a second team for anything else. And then we got Loki here. Loki is a guard DPS that does more damage to guards. She's very strong at the moment. Also, obviously, most people run guard teams, right? So she's one of the best DPS to have for that sort of style team. So obviously, good in like the guard versus guard mirrors, right? So those are all the. Oh, sorry. I did mention Princess Skadi, but I think she should be higher, right? She does fixed damage. Kills two. She potentially kill 2 units in one go. Very strong unit at the moment, right? And for Vera, I don't have a lot of experience with her. I know she's an instant charge unit. She probably has an over limit on JP. I'm not sure how widely used she is on EN for the heavy teams, but definitely a solid choice at least. I think she's at least tier 2 at the very minimum. But that's just like my limited experience with her. Then in the tier 2, we got Sam Gurner. I think Sam is better on EN at least at the moment. She's a T-Starry bait. This could change when T-Starry gets her over limit. But for now, I think Sam is probably should be in a higher rank for tier 1. Because she can be like the armor tank and also protecting against T-Starry. And then we got Xiao Yin. I think she's fallen out of flavor because Detective Mirai has come out and maybe there's just not too many spots for guards, right, to fit her in. She's okay. She has pretty nice tile range. And yeah, she's usable for heavies, but you do want a lot of skill ups for her as well. Angel Belina, definitely I think this is a good place for her. She's usable. Yeah, she has anti-res, which is good against a lot of tanky units, or a lot of like the auto taunts are resistance these days. So Belina is fairly well positioned. I guess the issue is that she doesn't count towards your guard count if you're running guards, and same for heavies, right? So that's like the downside to Belina, in my opinion. But I think she's still usable. If you can fit her in, she'll at least take out like probably 1, maybe 2 units before she gets taken out. Shisha, I think she should be a little bit higher because I think she's a fairly strong unit in the heavy teams. Maybe like probably a core unit. I'm not 100% sure as well, but as I said, I don't run heavies at the moment. But I suspect she should be like considered like a fairly good unit at the moment. Maybe who knows about JP, but because I haven't really looked at their meta game, but I feel like she probably should be higher, at least probably like low tier 1 as well. The normal Ilya, really good bait unit for Transcendent Ophelia. You do have to build your team around her because obviously, even with double HP, her HP is not that high. So if you're running tanks, they need to be below her health, right? Which can be a little tricky because a lot of the good guy units have very high health pools. But if you can fit her in, and if you're facing a lot of like Transcendent Ophelias, then she's a good counter unit to that because she's the only unit that I have found that reliably will win the duel against the Ophelia. The other unit that can sort of compare against Ophelia at the moment is Angel Belina, but in the case of Angel Belina, they draw most of the time, right? They'll kill each other. I don't find that Belina, I don't think she wins a duel very often. It's very a small percentage of the time. I think I have seen it like kill her like maybe once ever, but most of the time it's just going to be a draw between the two, which is still fine because you're just training one for one. That's not that bad. But obviously, with normal Ilya, not only do you win the duel and kill the enemy Theophilia, but you also will trigger your EX by the time she gets her turn, and that will snipe another unit. Right? She's another sniping unit. Same idea as like why Caitlyn and Mira are good. But I guess like she's a little bit more niche because she kind of needs that. She's a bit more conditional, right? As I've explained how she works. Now I'm a little surprised that Festive Dolores and Valentine Julius are here. I thought they would just be mostly Crusade raid units. Maybe there's a lot more armor tanks on JP, which is why they're considered usable. Similar idea is why Belina is good rather than just being like a pure PvE unit. But so those are there for that, and similar idea with Valentine Charlie. So I think she's in the correct place in terms of EN as well. She's the anti-dodge DPS. She was better when a lot more people were using Nastia instead, right, as one of their auto taunts. Obviously, the meta has moved because we have with the release of Red and Shushu, not many people will run a Nastia anymore. But if you do have trouble with some sort of dodge units on the enemy team, then Valentine Chalice is good for that. Now, Coco is, I think, a pretty solid unit. I think on EN, she should be a little bit higher, mostly because her tile range is very good. It does require rank 9 to get the best tile range, but a lot of people are unprepared for her tiles, right? So I think that makes her at least top of tier 2, maybe bottom tier 1 as well, or at least like lower end, right? I have mentioned quite a few units being like lower end of tier 1, but they're all like roughly the same, right, in terms of usefulness, in my opinion. Maybe on JP they're a lot more prepared, or maybe there's better counters to Coco now, but at least on EN, I think she's still a pretty solid DPS for PvP. I think that covers. Oh, sorry. There's also Mira here. So Mira is like a budget, not really a budget T-Star bait, but she is usable as a T-Star bait, and she has decent DPS, not amazing, but I think this is a correct tier for her as well. Definitely a usable unit, but not like amazing anymore. Now let's move on to supports. For supports, a little surprised with Misa here. She probably has an over limit, which is why she's on T0. Otherwise, the only other reason, assuming she doesn't have an over limit, the only reason why she would be here is if they are very commonly using the Lina plus Misa combo, where you buff the 2 units on the diagonal tiles with Lina's buff, and then you use Misa to target a unit in the middle between them, so that her buff, because it hits a column, it will buff both the units that Lina is also targeting, right? So you're basically doubling up the buffs, and it will give them max damage reduction, right? And that will make it a lot more survivable against Clock. The issue with running that sort of team, though, is that you're running 2 supports, and that with the way the metagame is at the moment, I would say that it's very difficult to run 2 supports. You kind of just need a lot of room on your team, especially the guard players, because you already need at least 4 guards. Recommended that you want to run 5 guards just to make sure that you reliably are using the Clock's EX. Then after that, it depends how many DPS you're running. Maybe like if you're running 3 DPS like I am, you don't really have that much room for another support, right? A second support. But that just depends on how many you want to run. You could get away with 2, but I do like more aggressive teams at the moment for PvP. Not that I really do that much tinkering with PvP like for the past couple of months, but my style is a bit more like aggressive. I like to try to take out as many units as I can on the enemy side to make it easier for myself. But those are the T0 ones. At the moment here, I would say Genia is probably a T0 on EN. But as I said, Harriet is coming out, and I think Harriet does counter Genia, if I'm not mistaken. In that case, then I think T1 is probably where she belongs, right? Similar idea with Type T, where when she was released, I would say she was a Type 0, oh sorry, a T0 unit. But now that we have Red to counter her, she falls out of flavor a lot, especially in like normal arena where it's a lot more easier to access Red, whereas on Cosmic Showdown, you have to choose which team your Red is on. So it's a little bit easier, or it's potentially like a 50-50 chance of facing a Red on the enemy side. So if you can plan around that, or you can like scout what other people are running that are close to you in your bracket, then you can see whether Type T is useful on your team or not. You could just gamble with like hoping that they don't run Red on offense. Probably unlikely that will happen, but alternatively, if you think that a lot of people are running Red on offense, then you can just run Type T on offense and base your attack team on that instead, right? So I think these sort of units, even though they're going to have counters or already have counters, they are still like solid choices on for EN at least. Also, not everyone's going to run Red on their main team, and that's the thing with PvP is that there's so many different people that running different comps that you can't plan around for everyone. It's very difficult to win against every single person in the top ranks. You'll usually have like a bad matchup against one or two people, right, at least. But if that's good enough for you, right, you want to minimize the losses as much as possible. If you're only losing to like one person and you're running Type T to do that, then you probably just leave it alone. But if you're finding a lot of people, like basically everyone's running Red on their teams, then obviously, like units like Type T and Genia will fall down a lot, right? Or at least once Harriet comes out for Genia. Now I was a little surprised with Dorothy being here because I don't think she is that good. At least not for PvP. Definitely for PvE, she's a good buffing unit. So I'm not sure what the synergy is here. I mean, I'll have to check her skill kit again. Also, I guess it is possible that it's an overlimit, but I kind of doubt it. I don't know if they'll overlimit a limiter unit at the moment. I mean, it's definitely possible though, but again, I just don't know what the goal is with that. So unfortunately, I don't have that much info for Dorothy. But those are all the T1 units that we have at the moment. Next, we got the Tier 2 ones, which are usable but not the best units. We got Odora. I think that's a reasonable place to put her. I think she is definitely usable. Similar idea with Miso, like she buffs like not as much damage as other units like Lena and Frank and stuff like that. But it's some damage and mostly the armor will help with surviving. That's probably why she's like considered usable. I haven't really seen anyone use her that much. Maybe like one or two people use her. I haven't checked replays for a little while, so I'm not sure what's changed there. But yeah, I'd say she's definitely like fine in Tier 2. Then we got Valentine Lilith, who we also got recently in a banner. Now I haven't had much experience with her, but based off her skill kit, it looks similar to Lena, right? Now I don't know how often they use her over there compared to Lena, but based on her skill kit, I think she's definitely at least usable. So this is probably where she is at. Franca is more of like a beginner unit. People will use her while progressing. I think Tier 2 is fine here. No one really uses her at all in the upper ranks of EN, at least not from what I've seen. But definitely like a good filler unit, right? She buffs attack and crit rate. She heals, like pretty decent skill kit. Then we have like Fleur's another interesting one. Same idea with between her and Dorothy. They're both like target the diagonal, right? And maybe they're super buffing one unit. Maybe that's what they're doing on JP. And that's maybe why they're running both of these. But I don't feel like anyone runs her on EN. As I said, with Lena being the best, or Lena or or Genia being the best supports at the moment, you basically just run one of them and then base your team around that, and then no one else is really ran in a PvP team. Similar idea with Hotel. I'm a little unsure why they have her at Tier 2. I mean, not like her kid's bad, but I just don't see a use really for her, right? So those are all the supports that we have for T2 and above. Now let's move on to the Crusade raid, which is a bit more my jam, right? First off, we have Shushu on T0 for guards. Now, guards I don't really use at all for most bosses, right? This is for high scoring teams. For middle of the pack, you're just trying to get your Crusade raid done as safe as possible. You'll probably use a guard. I would say Farnese is the best on EN because she has so much survivability. I guess there's not that many bosses where she is bad. Right? Having the extra life just makes it a lot more safer. But in terms of doing raw damage for your team, Shushu is technically the best because she has the armor debuff, right? But you have to keep in mind that the armor debuff does not work on every single boss. For example, the most recent boss we had doesn't have it. Or sorry, it was unaffected by it, right? You have to check what the immunities are. It may not necessarily say what number it is though, but you just have to test it out. See if you have the damage improvement when you include Shushu and when you don't. Before you start to use it, right? If you don't get any benefit from the Shushu, then she doesn't do anything. You don't just include her because she's tier 0, right? You have to think about what the boss does and what affects the boss. Now, Lulala, I haven't really used as a tank. I think like Finesse is better, so I would say Finesse above Lulala, but you can use Lulala as an active taunter if you want to. Normal Ophelia, I'm surprised at her being here. I'm unsure whether the counter attack is what makes her viable, right? Because she does counter attack when she gets attacked. It's only a small amount of damage though. I don't think it's going to do that much against bosses. But maybe that's why she's ranked higher. That's just my guess. I haven't had any experience with any of the other tanks here, especially not the ones that are not released. But for Kraz and Red, I haven't tried them in raids. I mean, usually I will base that team around not having any tanks at all. But if I'm building a team for like the budget setup for newer players, I would generally just suggest using Farnese because you're going to pull for her anyway during your early progression. Now these ones, they say like they're usable, but I've never seen their use for any of these, right? I guess last year could be used as an auto taunt, right? If you specifically need an auto taunt on a boss, then I think that's fine. But she's gonna be worse than Shushu, of course, because Shushu has a debuff, bit of utility, but definitely like an option if you really need an auto taunt for whatever reason. Now let's look at the DPS units. Now, I don't know if I would consider Coast Guard a DPS unit, but she's more of a debuffer, right? In my opinion, you can do some damage with her, but it's very small, right? She does fix damage, but her scaling is not very good, right, for bosses. Usually, I would use her as like a chip damage unit, where when I'm trying to get the boss as close as possible to death, I might like add some attack to her and get it to as close to the low health, before the overkill as possible, right? But she is, I would say, definitely like the rank 1 T0 unit because of her fragile debuff, right? And her crit damage buff, especially once you invested, because those are obviously going to increase. The debuff adds a ton of damage, and it's one of the best things for the overkill damage, because obviously you're going to cap on crit damage at some point. It's very easy to cap crit damage these days. So the way to further improve your damage is either using like mark snapshots, which I'll go over some of the marking units soon, but also like units that are fragile, because it's a debuff that works. It's like a multiplier on top of everything else you already have. So, which will be Coast Guard and Varia, right? So I'll talk about Varia soon because she's in rank 1, but Coast Guard is the best one because she has the highest fragile, right? She also buffs crit damage, that makes it a little bit easier to reach the crit damage cap with as few supports as possible, right? In case you need to add other like debuffers like Varia as an example, or a second DPS if you're going to go for an overkill with the mark damage. Belina being number 1 is unsurprising. There's only been one boss that she has not been good on, as far as I can remember, For every other boss, she's at least usable, right? Now, especially for people who just want to get by on Crusade, right? They don't care about doing like big damage going for rank 1 or anything like that. She's a very solid option for that because she's just going to be a unit that you can use in basically 99% of bosses and get you the hell clear easily enough. As long as she doesn't get bricked by a boss having max armor or just having max dodge damage reduction as well, or at least not without a way to remove. Right, there are some units that can remove dodge damage reduction. And also some of the boss mechanics might reduce it as well. But yeah, she's going to be good against pretty much everything. Right? She's a pretty good unit. And of course, for the resistance bosses, she's the best overkill unit at the moment. So yeah, I think that she's where she belongs. Pressure here is a little bit surprising because I mean we haven't had a dodge boss for a while, so I can't really test her out because there have been dodge bosses in the past, and I did like scale up my pressure, but I didn't think about using her as a marking unit to like do overkill damage at that time. Although maybe she was against a boss where it was like a hybrid boss where it was a dodge boss, but it also had some armor. Obviously, armor is like going to scuff her and reduce her snapshotting. But she's currently the best dodge marking damage dealer. We do have the Carolyn, right, with the overlimit. I actually don't see her here. I guess maybe she's just a budget unit, like budget version of it. I'm not going to go through it. Like, there's so many units in like the lower ranks. I just can't be bothered going through all that. But I will try the Carolyn to see how it goes. But Pressure is obviously the SSR unit, so she's going to be better at doing that job. Until we get a dodge boss, I can't give like too much more of an opinion on that at the moment. But they do rank her quite high here, right? So just keep that in mind. This one, Hikari, I'm actually a little bit surprised at here because I did skill her up to test her out. And it turns out for me, when I did try it, it was a complete waste of gold books, and I wish I could get them back. But they seem to rank her quite high. I'm not sure what the reason is. So I guess I'll have to test her out on other armor bosses and see how she performs. Because I haven't tried her out since I dumped all those books on her and did it for that boss at the time. Because especially because she was the new anti-armor unit at the time. And I thought that because she's new and they're doing a boss right with her, the boss was probably going to be designed around her being the best DPS. But it turns out it was wrong. So yeah, she's been just sitting there on the bench since then. Then we have Transcendent Ilya here. The other units, I don't think we have them. But there's Transcendent Ilya, who is, in my opinion, probably should be in T0. I'm not sure why they have her lower. Maybe there must be some reason, like maybe there's another unit that has overcap crit damage that is better than her. But at the moment on EN, she's the only unit that provides overcap crit damage, and that's like similar to the Coast Guard Fragile debuff. It's another way to increase your damage beyond having max attack and max crit damage from your supports. Because she'll add additional crit damage that goes over the cap, and then it will stack every time she attacks. So that's why she's very good, and I think she should be in T0 personally. Pepetta, I didn't think she was going to be good, but I guess maybe she has an overlimit. I'm not sure as well, but they do rank her quite high here, surprisingly. Then we have Mel, which at the moment is the best marking DPS for anti-armor, right? So you would use her in combination with Julius, like Valentine Julius, and or Festive Dolores if you have it. I think Julius is better, which is probably why they're ranked like this. Makes sense. But yeah, these two I think are the best anti-armor combination at the moment. This might change though, because I believe Alice gets a anti-armor overlimit, which I'm surprised she's not listed here, because I would have thought she would be listed, but it turns, I guess not. If I can, I'm not sure if I can quickly find her. She's ranked. She's basically ranked basically on the bottom tier here. So that is interesting. But we'll just have to see when she does get her overlimit. I am aware that she does have an overlimit. I just don't know how it performs in practice for Crusade raids. Maybe Julius is just better than her in that regard. Maybe that's why that's ranked like that. I'm also a little surprised here with Lily, because I've never thought of her being good in Crusade raids. A lot of this, because she's like a dot-based unit. Similar thing with Hikari. I guess maybe the reason they can be good is maybe there's enough time for the dot to stack up. That's my guess on why they're ranked this way, because I know there's a higher rank than what we have on, a higher difficulty that we have on EN server. We have, hell difficulty is the highest, and usually the health cap for that is 2 million, right? Sometimes there might be like a special boss where it's designed around having a higher health pool, where it's like maybe 9 million or something like that. But most bosses are 2 mil, and there is like another difficulty above that on the at least on the CN, or the not CN, the Taiwanese server. I'm fairly sure they have like a higher rank. JP, I must assume they have a higher rank. But yeah, these dot units don't have enough time to like do their thing, right? Because usually you have to kill the boss in like 1 or 2 hits, and that's why all the burst comps are, basically the meta for Crusade Raid. But maybe the higher health, it makes them viable, or the dot based ones, right? And Rodnia here is kind of like the budget Belina. I guess she's ranked high mostly because she's the only. Both. I think it's Rodnia and Pipetta are the 2 anti-res units, right? That's probably why they're ranked like this. Rodnia is basically like your there's no other choice, right? Aside from Pipetta, so basically you're using one of these 3 as your like finishers for anti-res. Actually, I think Pipetta is the marking DPS, if I'm not mistaken. I have to check the skills, because I don't think we've had a res boss for a while, so that's probably why I'm sort of like thinking about that. But I believe that's the reason why she's ranked pretty decently here. Any mark unit would be pretty good, right? So we have the 3 marks. Oh yeah, this makes sense. The 3 marks would be dodge, res, and armor. That's probably why. I think some honorable mentions here would be Charlissa for dodge, $30 for armor, and also Xiaomeng is like, a unit you can buy with $1 to be okay against anti-armor, but she's sort of being power cracked by all the the other anti-armor units, right? So you got $30 and Julius being better than Xiaomeng completely, right? It's very unfortunate. I don't like power creep to this degree, but that is the unfortunate case with those units. But if you don't have like these units and you do have a Xiaomeng, you'll probably be able to kill the armor bosses with her. Obviously, your scoring won't be very high, but that's probably the case. There's also going to be honorable mentions for both normal Skadi and Her Majesty. These are the units I try to use for the budget clears, right? And they're easy to access. That's why I use them, of course. And they're definitely usable, and you can kill hell difficulty with them, even though they're fixed damage units. Being fixed damage can be nice on most bosses, because then you don't have to worry about like having a specific anti-armor unit, right? Because obviously, if you already have an anti-armor unit, you don't need a budget unit, right? An anti damage reduction unit, right? For the specific one that you need for that boss, you can just ignore that completely with these 2. So that's the small benefit of those units. No surprise with normal Ilya. I don't know when you would use her. Kyoka is she has like good damage potential based off her like stacking damage. Again, I think the reason why she's ranked here is because she is they have like a higher difficulty with more HP. Probably gives her a bit more time to ramp up, and that's why she's probably usable. On EN, I think she's just unusable. You have to kill the boss too quickly usually to make her usable, right? I think that pretty much covers all the units that we have on EN, at least for attack. Now for supports, we got here. I think this is Maria. Maria is the best single target buffer at the moment, and seems like it's still the case on JP. Nay, still another god tier buffing unit. I agree with these two being the top. Now, I will say that one downside with Maria is that she does lower mobility. So it can be a little bit hard to use with Julius if you're running Julius as your finisher, which was the case for me in the most recent Crusade raid. Just keep that in mind that you may have to swap her with Maybell, right? Maybell is very close here, which I would agree with because for most bosses I don't really use Maybell anymore. But if you do need a second single target buffer, or you need someone that doesn't like grief mobility for your mobility based DPS, then Maybell is going to be a good unit for that. So being top of tier 1 makes sense. And then this is Monica. Monica's really good because she does significant buffs. She triggers her EX with the same condition as like other units like Xiao Wu. So it makes it easier to trigger. As long as you can trigger, one of them, all those will trigger as long as your turn order is correct. She also does big buffs, and she can reduce health. Reducing health sounds like it's a weird benefit, right? But the one benefit of reducing health is that it allows you to combine it with Avadi, who is also another tier 1 unit, which makes sense. Avadi needs to have her health lowered below 50% in order to trigger her EX. On some bosses, you can do this by just letting the boss hit her, or maybe they have some sort of AoE fixed damage that just happens to allow you to trigger her. But if you don't have that, then Monica is really good for lowering her health and getting that done, right? So they work together very well. Also, if you're running a dual DPS setup, she has a pretty decent single line or a single row targeting tile, right? So it's also same as Avadi, except Avadi is like in the opposite direction, right? So you can get them both to target in like the same, or basically like crossing over each other to double buff 2 DPS, which is really good. So they combine very well together. Then we've got Tina. Tina's more of a budget single target buffer, right? I probably wouldn't put her in tier 1. I'll probably put her on tier 2 only because you would generally just aim for Maybell as your general budget unit, because she's an SR unit, easy to obtain. The only like sort of time gate thing that you have to worry about is that Maybell has an overlimit that you need to upgrade, right? But once you get that done, she's just pretty much always going to be better than Tina. I don't know if there's any situation where Tina is better. It was a very small amount of like situations, right? Very specific ones where that would be the case. So I think she should be lower, but at least she's lower than Maybell on the overall. Now both Dorothy here and also Fleur are diagonal buffers. I think it makes sense for them to be on the same sort of like basically the same like equal tier and also positions. I think Dorothy is like her buffs like better than Fleur in terms of raw damage on a like unit by unit basis, but usually if you're going to run a diagonal buffer, you'll run both, like two of them together. So it makes sense for them to be together like this, and you can have both of them buffing units on each corner of the tiles, and then that will target the unit in the middle lane, right? So you use those two in tandem usually. Jiawu, another unit that as long as you can trigger her EX, she's very strong. Similar idea with her and Avadi, probably why they've sort of like combined them two together as well. So that's pretty good for that. Normally I would use Jiawu to target Nei, because Nei targets itself with the same pattern as Jiawu. So as long as Nei can target the units that you need to, then Jiawu will also target units as well. That's the same units, and especially in the case where you're running 2 DPS. For example, you might run like a unit in the middle row, and then one above, one below. You can use Yawu to target Ney in the middle and get both the units on the top and bottom, right? So that's Yawu there. Then we got this is I think that's Telly Rabbit. I don't know if she's actually good. I haven't actually used her because I feel like the other buffers are better. I guess she must be like a decent option. I would to see in the future whether there's any specific scenarios where you'll use Telly Rabbit over someone else. I'm not 100% sure on that yet. Type T, I know she's usable as a way to run both the 2 Scardies and Type T if you have Type T, and basically clear every boss with just basically abusing the fixed damage, right? That setup I know exists, but I haven't actually ran it myself, and I don't want to run it because when I give advice for a budget team, I don't want to advise a unit that you have to get on a custom banner unless it's a unit that you're definitely going to get already. For example, that's why I recommend Farnese, because usually you should just go for her in the early game because she'll cover you for every single mode until you're like ready for very late game PvP, right? So that's why I don't mind recommending Farnese, but Type T is a very niche unit, especially now that she has a hard counter with red, right? So that's why I wouldn't recommend it in my videos, but if you do have her and she's invested, then you can run her with the 2 Scardies. Lilith, this is the Valentine Lilith. I haven't tried yet either, because I don't have the skill ups, but I think her skill kit looks like it has good potential in Crusade raid, and she has very good targeting because it's different to a lot of the other units. She has her one's more unique. It's the same targeting as Miso, which none of the other units above her have for their targeting, right? Aside from maybe Yawu, because usually if you're going to double buff with Yawu, your units will be one above and one below the middle unit. But also less flexible, because obviously Yawu can do it in the single row as well. If you're buffing like Ney in the middle of the units that you're using Avadi and Monica to buff, because you can buff everyone with those tiles, right? Doing that, if you've seen some of my Crusade raid videos, you might have an idea of how that works. But I don't know, I haven't tried using her because I don't have the books. Then Lena, I don't know if I would rank her in T1 because I think it's very easy to obtain. Her the attack buff quite easily through other units that are buffing like other stuff already. So I've never really needed that. Not since like the very early days where she was usable. I think she'll be like a more of a niche unit where if you happen to need healing for some reason or damage reduction, then that's when you would run Lena, right? Aside from that, I don't think she has. I mean, I haven't used her since basically the first couple of Crusade raids. Odora, similar idea. I haven't really used her. I don't think she's that good. But she's usable. But I think that if you have the other options, then there's no real reason to try to fit her in. It's more of like if you have nothing else, right? Then Miso, I think she's probably worthy of being like bottom of T1, only because she's good for budget teams. If you have to run a tank and it's a boss that allows you to heal, because in the very early Crusade raids, they were like the Nevea boss, for example, from memory, she applied a like anti-heal debuff, which made it so you couldn't heal through it with something like a Miso. But these days, most bosses don't have an anti-heal, which allows me, or for a lot of my budget setups, I will use a Miso targeting the tank, just to allow you to last for the whole fight, right? Because you can tank it indefinitely, basically doing that. And even if you're running a low DPS unit like Skadi, then you'll eventually kill it as long as there's no ability on the boss that just wipes the team for whatever reason, right? Franca, also like a budget buffer as well these days. I can't fit her in any for my teams, but I think that everything here is just better than running a Franca, but she is good in those sort of budget teams, which is where I usually will run her, right? Just to show people a way to kill it with like the low budget units on hell difficulty. So yeah, sort of same sort of thing applies to her with Tina. I think those two sort of work together in this tier where they're budget choices, right? Now, Kaihua is a very niche unit, but she can be good just for being able to remove debuffs on your units. I don't think I've used her for a long time or ever, like for that reason. But I guess it is worth mentioning here as like a possibility that you could use. So I think that pretty much covers everything here for raid bosses. There's more here, but I just don't think any of these are worth talking about. And again, there's also the main story or PvE tier list, but they haven't updated this since 2 years ago, basically now. And I think there's no need to update this because I mean, obviously this one is already wrong, right? Because all you really need on this tier list is Morgan, right? Because Morgan will just clear everything. And if you can't clear it with Morgan, you would use like Alvida instead, or a Swimsuit Mirai if you have them, since they have different units that they trigger their nukes off, and different. Well, in the case of Mirai, she will target a different tile, right? Aside from that, the only other things you might need are like units that will redirect attacks, like basically the units like Sam Gurner, right? Who maybe you wouldn't use her with Morgan, but units like that apply a targeting ability. Those are the only other units that you might need, and then the rest is like some tanks and some buffers. That's all you really need. So I won't talk about that any further. That's all you really need to know about PvE. Is use one of the nukers, buff them up, and throw in some tanks to make sure your units don't die. And that is pretty much it for the tier list. Now, I know this was a very long video, so thanks for watching if you went this far. I did have to yap that long because there's just so much to talk about, and you can see why I skipped like everything at the like below that, because I think it's only worth talking about the units that we do have and the ones that are worth talking about. Anyway, I'm going to leave it here. Thanks guys for watching. I will be back obviously tomorrow with a update video for this week, and yeah, I'll stay tuned for that. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.